Here we go. Welcome back to Impact AI, the podcast where we explore how AI is transforming the way businesses think, decide, and grow. I'm your host, John Hodges, and today we're diving into what challenges uh, small businesses, how to turn data into decisions that actually move the needle. To help us unpack this, I'm joined by Jan Grinshtein, the founder and CEO of Nsight AI, a platform that's reinventing how product and business teams extract insights from data automatically, quickly, and intelligently. Jan has a rich background as a product strategist and design leader, having worked with big companies like Microsoft, Volkswagen, and startups like Can We, Augment AI, Hyper. His focus now, helping lean teams make better decisions faster. Jan, thrilled to have you on Impact AI. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having and thanks for inviting.
So, if you could give us um, a little bit of history, where your journey began, where your inspiration began about data analytics and how that can impact decision making at companies, and your experiences that inspired you to create Insight.
Um, well, the short answer is I wanted to write a book, and instead I decided to start a company.
Okay.
Um, the the journey begins really too many years ago, I guess. So I started doing I didn't call it data or collection or analysis or any of that stuff when I back in my days in agencies when I was an art director. And essentially, what I instilled in my teams and then myself and the company back then was to, in order to build products for customers, right? In an agency, you have a bunch of customers. You really need to understand two things. One is their core product and who the company is, and the second thing is where they're actually building or selling those products to, right? In order to do that, back then, and again, I'm talking about like 2007, 8-ish, so quite a few years ago there wasn't as many robust analytics tools for product or any kind of decision making as apart from some very sophisticated, incredibly complicated BI tools that are available to only some very wealthy, rich, big
Right.
financial institutions and things like that, right?
Right.
And so what I instilled in my organizations back then was going and touring customers' facilities, essentially experiencing their products from either a manufacturing facility or I remember when I worked with Volkswagen, we actually went to every dealership that we could find and experienced the purchasing process ourselves, if you will, to understand how that process worked and how to improve it for their customers going forward. And so that's really when the thought process of truly understanding raw or pure data rather than assumptions or someone said something, right, would be more impactful to understand how to build better products for customers. And then when I moved to client side and went to work at startups, this is when I dove even deeper to understand what exactly is happening, not only on the side of the user feedback that a lot of companies typically rely on, but also from other directions, things like customer experience, customer support, sales motions, internal kind of stakeholders, ideas, visions, and then so forth, and then kind of try and understand what's the cross reference between all of that. And so I would say that the biggest trigger that happened was back in 2018, 19-ish, when I was head of design or lead designer at the time at Hyper, the company you mentioned, the startup you mentioned. And we were trying to make decisions on, what are we actually building for customers and how do we make the product to be more delightful and usable for their employees because the product we're selling was a passive authentication for enterprise, right? So the people who are buying the product was enterprise itself. People who are using the product mostly were their employees internally, right, to unlock and log into their machines. And so I wouldn't say we necessarily struggled per se, but there were definitely difficulties in making proper decisions because there were too many people involved in the process,
Right.
such as, the chief revenue officer, VP of sales, marketing, customer support, engineering, product design, C-level, the leadership. Everyone had their own kind of view of the product from their, if you will, perspective, because they come with their own set of data from their side, right? So a salesperson or sales team has their own view of the product because they're trying to sell the product and they're talking to prospects. And we're talking to prospects. Prospects have an idea of what the product you're selling should have in order for them to pull the trigger, give you the whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars to buy your product. And so in their mind, there are certain things that the product need to have in order to sell the product, right? Then customer support has the same idea, but from a support standpoint and so forth. And so back then, this is when I decided to try to even dive even deeper into pure and raw data from all of these teams to understand how do we collide it all together, right? Kind of mash it all this data together and try to derive the important parts from all of that to understand what exactly we need to be building in our product that will satisfy all of these multi-dimensional motions, right? From the sales perspective, from existing customer perspective, and the future revenue of the company, right? And the goals of the company. That's when I devised a plan or idea at a time uh, of how to put it all together and how to run this entire process, which eventually became a decision-making framework that turned into an article that was published on, I think, UX Collective at the time or a year later. And that's essentially what kind of was leading me since late 1920s to I guess last year to kind of like I need to write a book about it because I've been getting a lot of inbound from design product leadership to like, hey, how do I use something similar to your framework in my organization to make better decisions? I kind of got tired, if you will, not that I don't enjoy talking to people, but I got tired of training and educating people
Hmm.
time and time and time again. So figured I'll write a book, but that didn't happen either.
Interesting.
That's the
Wow.
story, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So, you've led design and product strategy at startups and enterprise companies. What common data related pain points? Um, I mean, you've already kind of touched on all that, but I mean, so how did you get from this book to Insight? Because it was these pain points that you just mentioned that inspired your platform, right?
Yeah, so I'll make one correction. I never worked at Microsoft or Volkswagen or Deloitte or any of these companies. I worked
Right.
with them when I was in an agency. So just small kind of
Right, right.
correction
Okay.
there. Um, so the reason why my company was born, it was essentially so in 2021, I left Hyper, and I was planning on taking a year off and writing the book. That didn't happen because another startup came knocking on my door, convinced me to join. I did. That was Can We. Helped them, reinvent their product, go through their growth and whatnot. Then they got acquired eventually. And then while I was at Can We, another startup, Augment AI, came knocking on my door. Spent, I don't know, 3 months or so convincing me to join them, which was a fun, interesting experience. Um, and so I spent then a year and a half at Augment building a fairly sophisticated AI assistant, which was based on almost like a very interesting orchestration of predictive generative and extractive AI, which is three different kind of AI systems, if you will, that a lot of people don't know that they're typically play roles in the background that people don't are not aware of, and we've had them for many many years.
Ah,
Just never really called them AI, right? Like your predictive text on Google or whatnot, or
right.
your Siri or whatever. All of these kind of like were predictive and extractive AI systems that were playing in the background. Um, so when I left Augment in late 23, early 24, I was trying to like, okay, now I'm gonna write a book. Okay, so I wanted to do it in 21, didn't happen. Kind of took a little detour for a few years working in different other startups. Now I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to concentrate on the book. But I remember sitting on the couch with my wife and kind of thinking about all of that. And I realized that, hold on a second, I have the framework. Um, I just spent a year and a half building and working on an incredibly sophisticated AI product. So I know how AI systems work and I know how usable and useful it can be. And so I had this almost like an aha moment, if you will, of how my framework can be turned into an actual product. And instead of writing a book that the goal of was to give access to the framework to as many people as possible, then in that case, I figured, why should I write a book, give access to people to figure out how to deploy it when I can build a product that all
Right.
they can do is just turn a key and everything just works, right? It doesn't need to be a rigorous and time-consuming process of implementing the framework, or they can just deploy the product and just use the quote-unquote framework automatically already. That's how the decision kind of shifted into I'm going to build this as a product.
Okay. Well, it's interesting you mentioned can we? That was actually my next question. Um, and this speaking of uh, correcting me, I hope this statistic is correct. I used an AI generated research tool to get a bunch of information on you. It says that while you were at Can we, you helped drive a 500% increase in new users. Hopefully that's true. And if it is, that's quite impressive. Can you share um, with us like what influenced your thinking about that fast and data-driven iteration?
I'll make a correction. It wasn't 500, it was 470%.
Oh, well.
Um, so yes, we had a 470% user acquisition growth within the first 2, 3 months of relaunching the product. So what happened is when I joined, the company was struggling with their product, not necessarily as much acquiring users, but getting them through the entire onboarding process and then sticking, right? So a lot of people would download the app, create an account, but never complete the actual, full sign up process. And even the ones who would do that, uh, never really stuck around to actually engage with the product fully.
Yeah.
And so what I did, I deployed my framework where I came in, I spent basically about a month or so learning about the product, about the users, understanding the core team existing at the time, and then I shifted around some team members, gave them new titles, adjusted their function, then hired a few more people on the team. And what we did is we basically redesigned the entire application from the grounds up within the first, I would say, 4 to 5 months. Um, but while we're doing that, we didn't do that just because we thought that would be a better idea. We actually went to uh, research deeply our core user base, future potential users, understanding the entire marketing motion that was happening on the marketing side of
Hmm.
how they perceive the product and how our users currently in that moment perceiving the brand of the company and how they're do they have like any kind of emotional connections to the actual brand or the product itself.
Hmm.
And then also the visions of the founders, right? To understand what exactly you're trying to achieve here. Like, what is the underlying goal of your product? Like, what do you think this thing should be, right? Then we spoke with some behavioral psychologists as well to truly understand the relationship side of human beings because that was a relationship tech that was essentially making sure that people, when they do find each other on Tinders and Hinges and whatnot, uh, they actually do understand that the relationship they're about to go into is a good relationship that will stick in the long run.
Hmm.
And so when we collected all of that, we did the quote unquote the data triangulation to understand what is actually happening. Uh, what are the users are experiencing? What are their core pain points? What are the core needs? What is the marketing motions? What is the vision of the founders? And what is the actual business goal here, right? And so when we put everything together, we realized that there are several core issues we needed to address. One, we definitely need to reinvent completely the onboarding process. B, we needed to introduce a completely new functionality into a product, which we called essentially a pre-date alignment system. So essentially, what we did, we created two things. One, we allowed people or users to figure out how well do they align with a future potential partner. And then the virality part of that we created is they could send out an invite to a non-user of the product to fill out, quote unquote, a questionnaire or survey, if you will. And that will bring back to the user the almost like a Venn diagram to show how well they align with the other person they're about to go on a date with. And if the other person wanted to see the exact same Venn diagram in details, they have to create an account, right? So
Huh.
we created that virality loop where I'm going on a date, I have Kenwi, I'm sending you a link to, hey, here's a survey, fill it up, and we'll see how well we align before we
Yeah.
go on a date,
Yeah.
right? Oh, I see that we're fairly aligned, but you don't. But if you want to do that, create an account and you'll see the same Venn diagram, right?
Okay.
And so then we changed the entire experience in the product. We added the profile, which the company, the product didn't have at the time, and some other more details. And when we relaunched the product, the two parts of a full redesign of the user experience and the UI of the product, in addition with that virality loop of people creating accounts because they want to see more information, led to 470% of user acquisition growth.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's impressive. And so, I mean, there wasn't anything that inspired that idea, or is it just, hey, I think this might work?
It's just looking at data, understanding what are the so one of the biggest problems that I've learned over the 2 decades of being a designer and building products, designing products, working on a ton of different products from relationship tech all the way to aerospace, government, and then so forth is most companies and most products are mostly reliant on uh, really two things. One is user feedback, right? And what do the users want?
Right.
And the thing that I discovered over the years is that, and if you ask any founder of the previous whatever companies I worked at, they'll tell you one thing that isn't common across all the companies than when it comes to me. When I walk into a company, I always used to say, I don't care what our customers or users want. I really don't care. What I care about is what they need. And these are two very distinct differences because
Hmm.
in most cases, people don't necessarily always know what they want, right? It's just like
Right.
the famous Henry Ford quote. If I would have asked my customers what they wanted, they'll tell me a bigger carriage and three horses,
Right.
right? It's not because people are not educated or not smart. It's because
Right.
people are seeing their core problems or pain points in the immediate situation, and they're trying to solve that problem with the level or limit of knowledge they have about that specific product or their need, right? Just like when you go to Home Depot and you buy a drill, you don't need a drill. You don't buy a drill because you want a drill. You don't wake up one morning and say, I want a drill.
Yeah.
No, your core need there is you want to hang something on a wall. And
Okay.
the drill is just a tool to a means, right? And
Right.
so in your mind is like somebody at some point, whatever years ago, decided that, hey, people need to hang something on the wall. It's not always easy because a wall can be concrete. So you can't necessarily nail into it. So you need a drill. Let's invent a drill, right?
Okay.
So that's been my driver for many, many years is to understand what our users of the company or product I was working on actually need instead of just want. Sure, want is important to know, but it's more important to know and understand what they actually need. And sometimes customers or users might not even know.
Right. Right. That's yes, absolutely. I love it. Um, so Insight positions itself as automating insight generation, I guess. What does that actually look like in practice?
So we are data synthesis automation, if you will, like in the simplest terms, right?
Right,
Um, we're data triangulation, data synthesis, and cross-referencing automation process all in a single pipeline.
right.
What it really means is there's a bunch of other products you can probably find that what they will do is they will ingest your user feedback places like Google Play Store, App Store, Intercom, Zendesk, I don't know, your Slack, Facebook, social media and stuff like that, and they will show you what is trending in terms of what users are complaining about, or they're asking for, what they're looking for, and things like that. What we do, we have a proprietary system. We have a provisional patent on our entire software. What it does really is we integrate with a bunch of different applications, and users don't necessarily need to do anything like our customers. They basically just create an account, set it up, integrate whatever tools they're using, things like Intercom and maybe Jira or Asana or Slack or Dovetail or whatever.
Hmm.
What we do on our end, we automatically ingest all the data. We run data triangulation between all the integrations to understand the validity of the data and accuracy of it. Whatever is not valid or inaccurate or incorrect, we toss it away. Then we take all of that, we structure it, we organize everything, and then our in-depth NLP intelligence runs to understand and discover user issues across all of these data sets. And it uses three main categories of tagging systems. And it tags it basically based on emotional, technical, and behavioral tagging systems. What it does essentially, it understands all of the user pain points, annoyances, distrusts, requests, UI bugs, technical bugs, and the list goes on. And it structures that list of all the discovery.
Okay.
Then from there, it takes everything and runs all of it in a cross-referencing system with your KPIs, business goals, product goals, who are your users. Our system understands your user on the core level, right? All of your user ICP kind of personality and details, right? And so from there, it creates a list, a prioritized list of insights and recommendations on your product. So as an example, we have a customer that our system discovered that X amount of percentage of requests that they're having about deactivation of their account has a very specific reason, and that reason has nothing to do with customers not liking their product. That reason is the customers were having difficulties getting to a certain point of information they were looking for.
Hmm.
And so they were getting frustrated and saying, you know what, just screw it, just cancel my account, I don't care, right? And our system essentially found that out and said, here's the why X percentage of your users are asking for that. And here's a recommendation what you need to address in your product in order to remedy this problem,
Wow.
right? Now, typically in companies, right, and we literally just concluded a study with dozens of senior designers, design leadership, product leadership, and so forth to understand what is typical process, how long does it take them to get from raw data to an actual insights, not even recommendations, just insights. And it's about a week, which I'm aware of the process. I just wanted to make sure, right? So our system essentially does it in a matter of 10 minutes instead of a week,
Hmm.
getting from raw data across all of your disconnected applications that you run in the organization that typically design teams or product teams have no access to. Like design team has no access to Salesforce.
Right.
Product teams typically have no access to Intercom or Zendesk or Apollo or whatever else, right? So that's that way the entire company can have one place where they see what is happening with the users, what are the user issues, and what are the actual insights that are happening across their entire product, and then recommendations, right? So our system provides with here's the why and here's the what you should address
Yeah.
in order to hit your specific KPIs.
Okay. That's pretty simple for the user. And I'm glad you went in depth to answer that because you flew through several questions that I already had. Um, so we won't have to ask those. But what so when dealing with these companies, have you found any like misconceptions that primarily small businesses have when it comes to implementing um, this AI and data-driven type platforms?
To a degree, depending on the company, they have like different expectations, and sometimes there's like, oh, I didn't think it's going to be that or this, right?
Yeah,
Like the notion of AI assistance, right, that companies are looking at right now or thinking about right now is a prompt based because became like a thing. It started with ChatGPT, so everyone started copying, and now you're basically talking
right.
to your AI assistant, and now it's like called as an assistant or co-pilot or an agent, right? And so the expectation sometimes is, oh, I thought that I'm gonna have to prompt, right, the data ingestion, like all the
Okay.
data sets
Yeah.
to gain the insight and understanding of what's happening with my product or users or whatever, versus the fact that our system does everything automatically. You don't need to prompt anything, really,
Wow.
right? And the reason for that was deliberate because one of the issues that we discovered in earlier studies is uh, people that utilize or companies that utilize AI assistants within different applications or platform to derive insights. It still takes them days to get to an insight because it's a back and forth prompting,
Hmm.
and most people still don't know how to properly prompt in order
Right.
to derive the right information from even your own entire data set, right?
Yeah.
So these are kind of like the misconceptions that I've been observing is people or companies expecting one thing, but then when you show them another thing, they're like, "Oh, I didn't expect it or think about that."
Yeah. Um, so um, have you? So I would think that companies have this perception that they're going to be overwhelmed with all this information and have all these dashboards and metrics to try to interpret. Um, how does your platform work? As far as, or, I mean, it's because it sounds to me the way you're explaining it is it just says, "Hey, this is what we found. Here's the end result." Is that the way it is, or is there dashboards and metrics and is there like a sense of data overload?
So it's funny that you're asking because we're literally in the midst of redesigning our platform to actually add some dashboards. So hear me out. Um, when we started out with a notion. So I come from a world where I had to look at these at different dashboards,
Hmm.
Mixpanel, Hendo, I don't know, Google Analytics, and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like I'm not a trained researcher, so half the stuff that I was looking at, I'm like, I have no idea what it means.
Right.
Like I really don't know how to create a report from a Datadog data.
Yeah.
Like it's just I have no idea.
Right.
That's not my job, right?
Right.
And yet my job or my team's jobs in all the companies that I was a part of was literally responsible for what's going to be the future of the product, which meant what's going to be the success of a company. And yet, most designers or product people are not trained researchers or not trained data analysts. Like we don't know
Yeah.
in many cases what exactly we're looking at. Half of it is guessing,
Yeah.
right? And so the first or initial thought process was we want this to be so simple
Yeah.
that if I'm going to grab anyone from the street that doesn't work in tech, they can read and understand what it is and
Yeah.
what needs to be done, right? And so we went with that. There was no dashboards, there was no graphs, there was no charts, there was none of that. where it's basically here's the user issues we discovered, here's a list of insights and recommendation cards, and they're prioritized based on the highest scoring on your KPIs. That's it, right? But the one thing we discovered over the last whatever months that we launched and started working with some customers is that it was too confusing for them. Like there was an expectation of seeing kind of like an overview of, oh, you have 25,000 user issues that we discovered. You have 1,500 insights and 350 recommendations, right? They want to see this kind of like a big overview of what is happening. And then, of course, drill in. But on the drill in, we're not going to utilize still because we're still driven with that mission of simplifying that part that regardless who you are in the organization, you don't need a data science degree or research degree to
Right.
understand what you're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, our platform is incredibly simple,
Yeah.
where it's in human words. There's no, some sophisticated or complicated jargon. We're just basically talking to you like I'm talking to a friend of mine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what most people are looking for. There's a small about, a small amount of fear, I guess, um, for the data overload and whatnot. But
Yep.
um, okay, great. Well, so you've already told me. My next question was to use a real case where a small business um, used Insight, but you've kind of already touched on that. And do you have any other real use cases?
I have a great use case
Okay.
that I keep telling people because uh, our AI brain surprised me,
Mm.
which was not something I expected to happen. So we have a fashion brand as our one of our customers. That's the e-commerce. Um, when they start using a product, right? When they plugged in Shopify and stuff, what our system discovered for them was so typically in these kind of platforms that you find for even Shopify or whatnot that run analytics on your products, um, it essentially will tell you here's your highest rated product, and that's really it, right? And so you as a product manager makes a decision, oh, maybe I should put this product like on the front page above the fold,
Right.
make sure that people see it so they can buy more because it's a highly rated product. um, Now our AI did something different. It had said, instead of saying this is a highly rated product, which it was, it actually recommended to exactly where to place on the website this product. And it wasn't necessarily on the front page.
Huh.
It figured out the navigational pattern of customers of how to they navigate the website and how do they get to different places when it relates to a very specific garment. I'm spitballing here, let's say a t-shirt, right?
Right.
And it said, place it in this page at this place on the page to increase sales of that specific product.
Wow.
In addition to that, and that was the most surprising part to me, that's when I realized we can branch out outside of digital products and go into physical products with our product. It said, so it discovered that there was one garment that was essentially wrinkling a lot, and people were complaining about it. So instead of essentially saying, here's the garment that people are complaining about, it's wrinkling a lot, it said, it's wrinkling a lot. Here's why. And the recommendation was, have you considered three other types of material for this specific garment that will not be as wrinkling?
Wow. Wow.
I was blown away, like
Yeah.
seriously blown away. The fact that our AI brains is a collection of three different models. Two of them is off the shelf. One of them is we have our own model um, that essentially said, look, this product is selling, but it has a problem. And here's the problem. And in order to remedy this problem, here's three different materials you can use. I was like,
Unbelievable. Yeah. That is incredible. Yeah, I've been surprised myself in just using the small stuff that I have, but yeah, that does blow your mind.
yeah.
So, kind of along that line, um, looking forward. what are some of the most exciting AI trends that you believe will happen, or are there going to be true game changers for smaller businesses, even within the next, say, 12 to 24 months? What do you think?
Wow. That's a big question.
Well, I mean, you've kind of already experienced one of them right there. We're already seeing um, personalities come,
Hmm.
out
Yep.
of these
Yep.
AI tools. And so I was just curious if, in all that you see day in and day out.
I would say, um, I would say that there is going to be a big shift in small to medium sized companies, even large companies,
Yeah,
when companies truly understand um, how to deploy AI.
right,
Because today, a report came out from Atlassian, I think, early in the year, that talked about the fact that 96 or 97% of CEOs of Fortune 500 are not confident that their teams deploying AI in the right way and
right.
and utilizing its full potential.
Yeah,
Now, I think what will definitely change is people will learn more how to use it properly. Companies will realize how to deploy it better and what's the right tool for the right job. Because right now, what happens is a lot of companies are just throwing everything at everything and seeing like what sticks, what doesn't. Like the use case where what was it? I think New York Times when they deployed AI quote unquote writers and then laid off a bunch of writers. And when it started writing a bunch of fake stuff and unreal stuff and um, some derogatory, they realized like, hold on a second, that's we need
yeah,
to step back, change that, and remove that now, right? And I see this happening more and more, where companies just like, hey, let's use vibe coding for everything,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And as one of my engineers said, well, with vibe coding comes a lot of vibe debugging. And so I think that will be a big change where more companies become more stable. A lot of the AI wrappers that you have today will probably going to fall off the plate as OpenAI and similar companies are introducing more and more agentic AIs. A lot of the quote unquote wrappers will cease to exist or will get acqui-hired, if you will,
yeah,
by
yeah,
other companies. I think that will be a big shift over the next 12 to 24 months. And I do think that physical products will enter the space of utilization of AI. Things
yeah,
like manufacturing, agriculture, um, automotive. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I agree with you 100%. I'm glad you mentioned um, that the proper back a little bit in your explanation, the proper deployment, because it's fun hearing it from an expert, because I've always believed that if you if if you just properly know if you know properly how to deploy AI, the tools are cheap and but they're so powerful. So it's for smaller businesses, which is mostly where our focus is. It allows those smaller businesses to grow exponentially, like way more than they thought that they ever could.
Yeah, for sure. Like the when Jasper AI, right, became a big thing. I don't know if you're familiar with the tool or not. That's like a purely marketing. I mean,
Yeah,
they started with as a purely marketing AI. Um, they were an agent at the time. They didn't call themselves an agent. They called themselves an assistant or co-pilot or something like that. But essentially, it's an agent. Um, they definitely made a big dent in the marketing world,
yeah,
where suddenly marketing became even more automated,
right,
even more simplified for a lot of folks that frankly did not know how do you run Google ads or how do you run Facebook ads or how do
yeah,
you structure and put together and create an Instagram, ad or story or whatnot that will sell or drive users to your product or your website, right? Um, that was a big dent, and I think it'll go even beyond that. But again, there needs to be a lot of, I guess, education on the side on that side because while a lot of large corporations do have the budgets to educate their employees on how to deploy certain AI systems and how to utilize it, maybe smaller companies, to your point, right? They probably don't have the budgets or the time. So
Right.
oftentimes, what I can see from smaller businesses, and case in point, my wife ran a small business. She's a baker. Um, Oftentimes, like, I don't have the time to spend a week right now learning how to use AI. I need to do things. I need to do
Yeah.
orders. I need to satisfy my customers. I need to do billing. I need to do invoicing. Like all these things that technically can be automated, they don't have the time to even start using the tools to
Mm.
figure out how to use them to
Right.
automate this.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, this has been amazing. We've we're about out of time, so I won't take up any more. But thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for being here. This conversation really shows, I believe, small businesses and how like we discussed, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit,
Mhm.
um, and allows them to make to use platforms to make data-driven decisions. So I feel like Insight is helping lower the barrier, so to speak, for the smaller companies. So thank you so much for
Of course.
coming, Jan. And for those of you listening, if you want to head to insightapp.com, that's where the Insight website can be found, and to learn more information about that. And if this episode gave you something to think about, make sure to subscribe, share it with a colleague, and as always, keep making an impact. So thank you. All
Thank you
right,
for having.
Jan.
It's been a blast.